She was a single mother driving through the storm, trying to make it to the end of another long night. Her only companion, a loyal German shepherd who never left her side. Then came the call. A man, bleeding and half-conscious, needed a ride from a bar on the west side. She almost said no until the dispatcher mentioned the cash, $200, enough to buy her son's medicine for the month. When she arrived, the place was nearly empty. The bartender pointed to the man slumped over the counter, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in black, blood dripping from his collar. Even half dead, he carried something dangerous in his silence. She helped him into the back seat, rain pounding against the roof. He whispered an address that froze her heart, Hollow Creek Estate. Everyone in town knew that name. She didn't know it yet, but that one decision, that one ride through the snow, would change her life forever. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. The blizzard came down in quiet fury, turning the streets of Ravenhill, Minnesota into rivers of white silence. Streetlights flickered through the storm, halos of gold swallowed by wind and ice. Inside her battered yellow cab, Maya Thompson gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. At 32, Maya had the kind of tired beauty that carried its own history. Tall and slender, with long chestnut hair often tied into a loose braid under her gray beanie. Her face was pale from years of sleepless nights, her gray eyes calm, yet clouded by the exhaustion of someone who had spent too long surviving instead of living. Once, she had been an art student. Now she drove nights to keep her son breathing. In the back seat, her constant companion shifted and let out a low grunt. Shadow, a 7-year-old German shepherd with black and gold fur and intelligent amber eyes, raised his head to watch the snow outside. A faint scar crossed the bridge of his nose, a reminder of a rough past before Maya found him abandoned near a shelter years ago. He was more than a dog. He was her partner, her second heartbeat, the one soul she trusted in a world that had long ago stopped feeling safe. The cab's radio crackled with static and old blues music. The heater wheezed, barely keeping the frost off the windows. Maya glanced at the dashboard clock. 2:43 a.m. 3 more hours until her shift ended. 3 more hours until she could go home to Noah, her 7-year-old son who slept in the care of Mrs. Palmer, the kind widow from the floor below. Noah's asthma medication was nearly gone, and the electric bill waited unpaid on her kitchen table. When the dispatch phone buzzed, Maya flinched. "Pickup, Murphy's Tavern, West Side, cash fare," the screen read. She hesitated. The West Side at this hour was bad news. Drunks, fights, men who thought a woman behind the wheel was an invitation. She almost declined until her earpiece chimed again, and Tom, her dispatcher, called through, his gravelly voice weary but firm. "Maya, it's a good one. $200, bartender's paying cash if you take the guy home. Says he's in rough shape." "$200?" she repeated, disbelief threading her tone. That was Noah's inhaler, a week of groceries, maybe even a small break from the edge. "What's wrong with him?" Tom exhaled. "Not sure. Bartender said he's breathing, just needs a ride. Won't let anyone call the cops or an ambulance. Your call." Maya rubbed her eyes, feeling the sting of sleeplessness and cold. Her heart said no, but her wallet whispered yes. She thought of Noah's small chest rising and falling at night, the soft wheeze that haunted her when she closed her eyes. "I'll take it," she said finally. Shadow's ears perked up as she turned the cab toward the west side. The roads narrowed, snow drifting across the asphalt like sheets of silk. When she arrived, Murphy's Tavern looked almost swallowed by the storm. Its neon sign blinked weakly above a half-buried awning, the last bar open before the forest began. A man stood outside smoking, wrapped in a greasy apron, breath steaming in the freezing air. "You the taxi?" he asked, his voice hoarse. He was short and thick-bodied, probably mid-40s, eyes bloodshot from too many long nights. His name tag read, Gus. "Yeah," Maya answered, rolling down her window slightly. "Good. He's inside. Can you help me get him to the car?" She frowned. "How bad is he?" Gus looked away, flicking his cigarette into the snow. "Bad enough. Says he's got cash, though." Maya shut off the engine and opened the door. The wind knifed through her coat instantly. Shadow jumped out beside her, his paws sinking into the snow. The dog stayed close, alert, tail low but steady. Inside, the bar smelled of whiskey, stale smoke, and something metallic. Blood. Tables were overturned. Shards of glass glittered like frost on the floor. The jukebox in the corner played a broken melody through one working speaker. Then she saw him. Slumped against the counter, head bowed, sat a man in a black tailored suit, the white of his shirt soaked dark red. Vincent Morello, though she didn't know his name yet. He looked mid-30s, maybe older, broad-shouldered and tall, his presence commanding even in ruin. A jagged cut ran along his jaw, blood seeping from split knuckles. His once slicked black hair clung wetly to his forehead, and his face, sharp, sculpted, faintly scarred, was the face of a man who'd lived too long with violence. "He stumbled in about an hour ago," Gus muttered behind her. "Told me not to call no cops, just wanted a ride home, paid in cash." Maya knelt beside him, her hand hovering above his shoulder. "Sir, can you hear me?" His eyelid fluttered open, revealing an iris so dark it looked like a bottomless well. "Need to go home," he rasped. His voice was deep, low, rasped by pain, but threaded with command, the kind that made people obey without question. "Where's home?" she asked, leaning closer. He mumbled something, an address she could barely catch. Hollow Creek Estate. Maya froze. Everyone in Ravenhill knew that name, a mansion on the outskirts of town, rumored to belong to the Morello crime family. She should have walked away. But the thought of Noah's medicine dragged her forward. With Gus's help, she half lifted, half dragged the man to the cab. Shadow growled softly, uneasy. The man's weight was pure muscle, dead weight now. They laid him across the back seat, his head slumping against the window. Maya's hands trembled as she typed the address into her GPS. The route blinked back at her, a red line leading into the forest north of town. The snow grew heavier, swirling in thick white curtains that swallowed the headlights. Shadow whined quietly as if warning her, but she pressed on. The drive took 20 minutes, every second, stretching like an hour. The forest loomed on both sides, branches heavy with snow arching overhead. The iron gates of Hollow Creek stood open, their black bars dusted white like bones. Beyond them rose the mansion, gray stone, tall windows dark and lifeless, a fountain frozen mid-splash in the courtyard. She stopped the cab and looked back. "We're here," she said softly. The man stirred, eyes opening just enough to meet hers. He reached into his coat, pulled out a wallet, and tossed it weakly onto the passenger seat. "Take what you need," he said. Maya opened it, her breath caught. Inside was a thick stack of cash, maybe $3,000. Her conscience screamed, but desperation roared louder. She took only $200 and left the rest. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave the faintest nod, then opened the door, stepping into the snow. For a moment he stood there, tall and ghostlike in the storm, watching her through the window. Then he turned and limped toward the mansion. Maya shifted into reverse, heart pounding, but before she could pull away, Shadow's ears shot up. The dog let out a low, warning growl. Through the blinding snow, two black SUVs rolled silently up the driveway, headlights slicing the dark, closing fast. Maya's pulse slammed in her throat. "Oh God," she whispered. She slammed the gas pedal. The tires spun on the ice before catching, the cab lurching sideways into the storm. Behind them, men shouted, voices sharp, urgent. Shadow barked once, deep and fierce, as if urging her to drive faster. Maya's hands gripped the wheel, eyes stinging from fear and wind. She didn't look back, not once. But in her mirror, for a brief second, she thought she saw one of the SUVs stop beside the man in black, and someone stepping out, gun drawn. Then the snow swallowed everything. Snow still fell the next morning, soft and relentless, blanketing Ravenhill like a city trying to forget what it had seen. The streets were muffled, quiet, except for the hum of Maya's cab returning to the small brick apartment complex on Elmwood Avenue. The storm had eased, but her heartbeat hadn't. Her fingers still trembled faintly against the steering wheel, memory replaying the headlights, the shouts, the shapes moving in the blizzard. Shadow sat beside her, his golden-brown fur damp, eyes fixed on the road ahead. He hadn't barked once since they left Hollow Creek, as if he too understood that silence was safer. When Maya parked and stepped out, the cold slapped her face. The world looked too peaceful, almost cruelly so. She walked up the stairs, Shadow padding quietly at her heel. But as she reached her door, she froze. Something dark sat against the doormat, a black duffel bag soaked around the edges from melting snow. Her stomach tightened. She hadn't left it there. No one should have known where she lived. Shadow moved forward, sniffing the air, tail stiff, then gave a low growl. Not furious, but cautious. Maya knelt, her breath fogging in the cold, and unzipped it just enough to see inside. Bundles of money, neatly stacked, bound with rubber bands. At least $10,000, maybe more. On top, an envelope of thick cream paper written in elegant handwriting. For your trouble, stay safe. For a long moment she just knelt there, the snow hissing softly on her coat. Then she zipped it back, grabbed the handle, and hurried inside. The small apartment was dim and quiet. A heater groaned weakly from the corner. The scent of yesterday's coffee still lingered. Shadow followed her to the kitchen, sitting near the door like a sentry. Maya stared at the duffel on the table, heart racing. $10,000. That was enough to pay her rent for months, buy medicine, maybe move somewhere better. But money like this never came free. She knew that. Her father had been a truck mechanic who gambled his life away after her mother died, always promising to fix things with one big win. Money with blood on it always demanded more blood later. A soft knock broke her thoughts. Shadow's ears pricked, his body tense. "Easy," Maya whispered, stepping toward the door. Through the peephole, she saw Mrs. Palmer, her elderly neighbor, short, round, wrapped in a heavy blue cardigan, holding a tray of cinnamon rolls. The woman had kind eyes and a voice that carried warmth even through the thin hallway walls. "Maya, dear, you got home late again," Mrs. Palmer said when the door opened. "I thought I'd bring breakfast. You look pale." Maya forced a small smile, hiding the tension in her face. "Thanks, just a long night. How's your grandson?" "Still in college, still broke." Mrs. Palmer chuckled, then frowned when she saw Shadow pacing behind Maya. "He's restless today." "Yeah, Maya Babk said softly. "Long night for him, too." Mrs. Palmer looked as if she wanted to say more, but didn't. She handed over the tray and left with a motherly warning. "Get some rest, dear. No good ever comes from driving when your eyes can't stay open." When the door closed, Maya locked it twice. She stared at Shadow, who now sat by the window, watching the snowflakes drift past the glass. "What the hell did we get into, boy?" she murmured. Shadow turned his head slightly, ears twitching, almost as if he agreed she was in trouble. That afternoon, Maya called her dispatcher, Tom. "Tom, listen," she began, voice low. "The guy from Murphy's. What do you know about him?" There was a pause, the kind that hummed with unease. "Not much," Tom said. "Bartender said he paid cash, no name. You got him home safe?" "Yeah," Maya lied. "Just checking." When she hung up, she noticed a dark sedan parked across the street, black tinted windows, engine idling faintly beneath the snow. Her pulse jumped. She tried to convince herself it was coincidence, but every few minutes when she looked again, the car was still there. That evening, Noah came home from school, cheeks flushed from the cold. He had his father's light brown eyes and her quiet focus. "Mama, can Shadow sleep in my room tonight?" he asked, slipping off his boots. "Sure, baby," she said, kissing his forehead, but her voice cracked with a worry he didn't understand. Shadow wagged his tail and trotted after the boy down the hallway, protective as ever. Hours passed. The sky darkened. The streetlights buzzed to life. Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring at the duffel bag, her hands gripping a mug gone cold. She didn't hear the knock at first, a slow, deliberate rhythm that made her blood freeze. Shadow barked once from Noah's room, deep in warning. Maya opened the door a crack, chain still on. A man stood there, Detective James Rowan, as he introduced himself with a flash of his badge. Mid-40s, tall, broad-shouldered, under a gray trench coat dusted with snow. His face was worn, weathered, lined by years of chasing darkness. A day-old beard shadowed his jaw, and his eyes were steel blue, sharp, observant, carrying the fatigue of someone who'd seen too much to ever rest again. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am," he said in a calm, professional tone. "There was an incident last night near Hollow Creek Estate. Couple of witnesses said they saw a yellow taxi leaving the area fast. Yours matches the description." Maya's stomach twisted. "I drive nights," she said carefully, "but I didn't see anything unusual." Rowan studied her face for a moment, reading the hesitation. Then his eyes flicked toward Shadow, who stood stiff beside her. "Good-looking shepherd," he said softly. "Protective, too. That kind always knows when trouble's coming." Maya didn't reply. Rowan reached into his coat and handed her a card. "If you remember anything, even small details, call me. The man who got shot last night is still missing, and whoever came for him won't stop looking." She accepted the card with a nod. "I'll keep that in mind." When the door shut, she leaned against it, breathing hard. "Missing," she whispered. That meant Vincent had survived the gunfire, or vanished before the police arrived. Either way, the world outside was closing in. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Maya sat on the couch with Shadow's head resting on her knee. The apartment lights were off, only the glow of a single lamp beside the window. Outside, the black sedan was still there, unmoving, its headlights off but its presence unmistakable. Her phone buzzed suddenly, lighting up the dark. A text from an unknown number. "You forgot something." Her hands went cold. She typed back before she could think. "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "Check your doorstep." Shadow lifted his head, ears pricked, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Maya stood slowly, heart hammering. She crossed the living room, barefoot on the creaking floorboards, and peered through the peephole. The hallway was empty. But when she opened the door, the cold wind swept in, and there, lying on the doormat, was a single red rose, dusted with snow, and beneath it, a folded note sealed in wax. She didn't need to open it to know who had sent it. And somewhere out there, beyond the falling snow, she had the uneasy feeling that someone, or something, was still watching. Tom ta ting viet, sang himself, Maya fat him with tui duffel din chutin vitoje. For your trouble, stay safe. Vi, det trukunya, goloso, nhưng không dám bao cảnh sát. Một xe hơi đen bí ẩn xuất hiện trước tòa nhà, rồi một thám tử tên Rowan đến hỏi về vụ nổ súng đêm qua. Khi đêm xuống, Maya nhắn tin nhắn là "You forgot something", và trước cửa chỉ còn lại một bông hồng đỏ cùng tờ giấy niêm sáp. Cô hiểu người đàn ông cô cho đêm qua vẫn còn sống và đang dõi theo cô. The snow had turned to sleet by the next evening, streaking down the window like cold tears. Ravenhill's streets shimmered beneath the dull orange of streetlights, and the air smelled of salt and iron, the scent of a town holding its breath. Inside the diner on Main Street, Maya wiped the counter for the third time, pretending not to notice her hands shaking. The red rose from last night lay hidden in her bag, its petals now darkened and fragile. She'd barely slept. Every creak in the hallway, every passing car outside had sent her heart hammering. Shadow was with Mrs. Palmer tonight, since the diner didn't allow dogs. The apartment felt too small, too exposed. Work, at least, was distraction, until the bell above the door chimed. She looked up and froze. The man who stepped in from the sleet looked almost like a stranger wearing a familiar face. Vincent Morello stood tall in a charcoal gray coat, a dark scarf wrapped around his neck. The bruises on his jaw had faded to pale shadows. The cut along his temple was cleanly stitched. His black hair was combed neatly, still damp from the storm, and his eyes, those same deep, unreadable eyes, found her instantly. Around him, the diner seemed to still. The air thickened with the kind of silence that only power could command. Maya's grip tightened on the rag in her hand. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to make sure you were safe," he said, voice low but steady. It wasn't the slurred rasp of the bleeding man in her cab. It was calm, deliberate, the voice of someone used to control. From the kitchen, her manager, Pete, poked his head out, frowning. Pete was a stocky man in his 50s, balding, usually kind but cautious around strangers. His smile faltered when he saw Vincent. "You need something, sir?" Vincent's gaze didn't leave Maya. "A cup of coffee, black." Pete nodded slowly and vanished, muttering something about trouble in a suit. Maya's pulse raced. She tried to look busy, but her mind screamed to run. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Vincent's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "To talk. Sit with me." "Mister, I'm working." "I already spoke to your manager," he interrupted softly. "He says you can take a break." She turned, and sure enough, Pete stood in the doorway, gesturing nervously. "Go ahead, Maya. Take 15. Her body felt heavy as she followed Vincent to a booth in the corner, the one shadowed from the front windows. The hum of the neon sign buzzed faintly overhead. He gestured for her to sit. She did, though her heart thudded painfully. "Why the money?" she asked immediately. "Why follow me? What is this?" He took a slow sip of his coffee before answering. The money was gratitude. The rest was necessity. Necessity? "You were seen with me, Maya. That means you're a target now. There are men, dangerous men, who believe you know something. You shouldn't." She leaned forward, eyes fierce. "I don't know anything." "I know," he said quietly. "But they don't." Maya exhaled shakily, her knuckles pressing against the edge of the table. "Then, fix it. Make them stop." "I'm trying," Vincent said. His voice softened just slightly. "But until then, you'll have protection." "I don't need your protection." He tilted his head, studying her. "You think Shadow can guard you from men with guns?" The mention of her dog startled her. "You know his name?" "I know everything about you," he said. "Your son, your building, your shift hours. That's how I keep you alive." Maya's blood ran cold. "That's not protection. That's stalking." Vincent didn't flinch. "Call it what you like. But last night, 2 men in a black sedan waited outside your apartment. They weren't mine. I made sure they didn't come back." Her breath caught. "What did you do?" "I removed the problem." Something flickered in his expression, not pride, not guilt, but the weary acceptance of someone who'd done terrible things for too long. Maya looked away, pressing her palms together. Pete returned with the check, setting it down with trembling hands. "Coffee's on the house," he mumbled, eyes darting nervously between them. Vincent nodded, polite but dismissive. When Pete walked away, Vincent leaned forward, his tone dropping low enough that only she could hear. "I didn't choose this life, Maya, but I can choose what to do with it now, starting with keeping you safe." Maya met his gaze, anger and fear warring inside her. "Why me?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." A long silence. Then, "Because you didn't call the police that night. You could have left me to die, but you didn't. People in my world don't show mercy. You did." The words hit her harder than she expected. For a heartbeat, the air between them shifted, less dangerous, more human. Then the door chimed again. A pair of men entered, both in dark coats, their movements too synchronized to be coincidence. One was tall and wiry, blonde hair slicked back with a crooked nose that spoke of past fights. The other was broader, clean-shaven, eyes sharp as razors. They took a booth near the entrance but didn't order. Their gazes kept flicking toward Vincent. Maya noticed first. "They're watching you." "I know," he said calmly. "Then leave," she hissed, "before you bring whatever this is into my life again." He smiled faintly, almost amused by her courage. "It's already in your life." The blond man stood up, pretending to fix his coat, and headed toward the counter. Vincent's body tensed, subtle but immediate. Maya saw his hand slide beneath his jacket. Pete called from the kitchen. "Everything okay out there?" Vincent's voice was smooth. "Just fine," but his eyes told a different story. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small card, and slid it across the table. "If anything happens, if you see that car again, or anyone asks about me, call this number. A man named Luca will answer. You can trust him." "Can I?" she muttered. "For now," he said simply. Then, as if on cue, Shadow's bark echoed faintly outside, loud and sharp. Maya's heart leapt. She hadn't realized Mrs. Palmer had walked him here tonight. Through the window, she caught sight of the German shepherd standing in the snow near the diner's door, hackles raised, eyes fixed on the 2 strangers. The blonde one froze, glancing uneasily at the dog. Vincent stood. "Time to go." "Where?" He glanced back at her, eyes unreadable. "Home. Don't open your door for anyone tonight." He turned to leave. The 2 men by the door rose almost simultaneously, blocking his path. What happened next blurred in motion. A sharp crack, a flash of movement. Vincent slammed the taller man's wrist against the counter, twisting it until the gun clattered to the floor. The other lunged, but Vincent's elbow met his throat with surgical precision. Within seconds, both were down, groaning, alive but humiliated. Gasps erupted from the diners. Pete ducked behind the register. Maya stood frozen, heart pounding. Vincent turned to her, calm as if nothing had happened. "I told you, you're already part of this." Before she could speak, he walked out into the snow, disappearing into the storm with two black SUVs screeching to a halt down the block. The same ones from that night. Shadow barked once more, ears flat, as if to warn her of something worse coming. And deep down, Maya knew. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one that had just begun inside her life. Snow howled again that night, a relentless echo against the windows of Maya's apartment. The storm had returned, fiercer than before, as if the sky itself was warning her to run. The lights flickered every few seconds, shadows rippling across the peeling wallpaper. Shadow paced near the door, restless, his nails clicking on the floorboards. Every sound outside, a car door, a creak in the stairwell, made his ears twitch. Maya sat on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, staring at the phone number written in Vincent's bold handwriting. Luca. She had promised herself she would never call, but the fear in her chest had grown heavier since the diner. Noah was asleep in his room, hugging Shadow's old chew toy like a talisman. Maya's heart softened at the sight of him. His calm breaths, his tiny hand resting beside the dog's worn toy. For him, she could endure anything. But when she turned back toward the window, a dark sedan was parked across the street again, the same one she'd seen before. Its headlights were off, but she could feel its gaze. Shadow's growl rumbled low in his throat. Maya whispered, "I know, boy. I see it too." The knock came minutes later. Soft, careful, too careful. She froze. "Who is it?" a voice replied, muffled through the door. "It's me, Vincent." Her heart stuttered. She ran to the peephole, and there he was. He looked different this time. His dark coat was dusted with snow, his hair damp, his face drawn tighter than before. But it was the eyes that stopped her. They were sharp, alert, and beneath them, a fatigue that spoke of danger. She opened the door, just a crack. "Why are you here?" she hissed. "Because they found you." Before she could respond, something shattered downstairs. Glass, then shouting. Shadow barked, deep and furious. Vincent shoved the door open and grabbed her arm. "Get your son, now!" Adrenaline wiped away the questions. Maya sprinted down the hall to Noah's room, scooping him into her arms as he woke in confusion. "Mama?" "Hold on to me, baby," she said, voice trembling. The hallway lights flickered again, and the next moment, the stairwell exploded with sound. Heavy boots, gunfire, and chaos. The walls shook. Vincent drew a gun from inside his coat and positioned himself by the door. "Stay behind me," he ordered. His movements were precise, professional, frighteningly efficient. Through the window, she saw shadows crossing the snow, men in dark coats closing in. One of them carried something that glinted in the dim light, a rifle. "Vincent," she gasped, "we can't fight them here." He nodded once, eyes never leaving the doorway. "Then we run." He fired twice, covering their retreat. Shadow lunged forward, barking wildly as they raced down the back stairwell, the dog's body tense and fearless. The smell of gunpowder burned in the air. Outside, the snowstorm swallowed everything. Their breath, their fear, their footprints disappearing behind them. Vincent led them through an alley behind the apartment block, his dark coat whipping in the wind. They reached a black SUV half buried in snow. He yanked open the passenger door and shouted, "Get in!" Maya slid in with Noah in her lap. Shadow jumped in last, curling protectively beside the boy. The engine roared to life. Maya turned to Vincent. "Who are they?" "People who used to work for me," he said grimly, eyes on the road, "and one who used to be my friend." They sped through the storm, the headlights cutting across the snow like blades. "His name's Marco," Vincent continued. "He thinks killing me makes him king." His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I trained him myself." Maya studied him, the tension in his jaw, the haunted look behind his calm. She realized then that Vincent wasn't just fighting others, he was fighting himself too. They drove for miles until the city lights vanished behind them. The SUV skidded up a winding road into the woods. Ahead, through the swirling snow, an old chapel appeared. Stone walls, shattered stained glass, its cross leaning crooked atop the roof. Vincent stopped the car and turned to her. "We can't outrun them in this weather. We hide here." Inside, the chapel smelled of dust and ashes. Wooden pews were broken, moonlight pooling through the fractured windows. Shadow sniffed the corners, alert but silent now. Noah clung to Maya, trembling. Vincent scanned the shadows, gun raised. "Stay behind the altar if anything happens." "What about you?" she asked. He gave a faint, almost tender smile. "I'll buy you time." Maya shook her head. "No, you don't have to." He interrupted softly. "Yes, I do." Outside, the sound of engines cut through the storm. Headlights washed across the stained glass, turning the snow red and gold. Then came the footsteps. Maya grabbed Noah and ducked behind the altar. Shadow pressed against her leg, muscles coiled. Vincent crouched by a pillar, steady and silent. The first shot cracked through the door, wood splintered. Another followed, then another. The chapel erupted into chaos, bullets shredding the air, glass raining down. Vincent moved like a ghost, returning fire with perfect rhythm. Each shot precise, each motion rehearsed by years of survival. But the odds were against him. A bullet grazed his shoulder, blood blooming against his coat. He barely flinched. From her hiding place, Maya could see his silhouette through the smoke and snow, tall, relentless, the very image of violence and grace intertwined. She wanted to scream for him to stop, to run, but she knew he wouldn't. Then, silence. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind sighing through the broken windows. Maya held her breath. A figure appeared at the doorway. Not Vincent, but a broad man with a jagged scar across his cheek. Marco. His voice was almost gentle. "End of the line, boss." Vincent stood slowly, his gun lowered but ready. "I should have killed you when I had the chance." Marco smiled faintly. "You tried." Before he could pull the trigger, a sharp bark rang out. Shadow charged from the side, slamming into Marco's leg. The gun went off, the shot ricocheting into the ceiling. Vincent seized the opening. 2 shots, clean and final. Marco crumpled to the floor, the light in his eyes fading. For a moment, everything was still. Then, Maya emerged from behind the altar, clutching Noah. Blood dripped from Vincent's sleeve, staining the floor dark. "You're hit," she whispered. "I've had worse." His voice was soft now, almost peaceful. "It's over." But as sirens wailed faintly in the distance, Maya knew nothing was truly over. Not yet. Vincent looked at her, the exhaustion in his eyes almost human. "Take your son. Go home." She shook her head, tears streaking her face. "Not without you." He smiled faintly, that rare, broken smile she would never forget. "Then stay close." Outside, the storm began to fade, but the air still burned with gunfire and redemption. The storm had passed by dawn. The world outside the chapel was still, painted silver by morning frost. Smoke curled from the barrel of Vincent's gun as the final echo of violence faded into silence. Maya stood in the middle of the ruined aisle, Noah clinging to her leg, Shadow sitting beside them, his chest rising and falling fast, ears still alert. Snow drifted gently through the shattered windows, settling over the bloodstains like a merciful blanket. Vincent leaned against the altar, one hand pressed to his side, breathing shallow. His once immaculate coat was torn, soaked in red. Maya ran to him, fear tightening in her throat. "You need a hospital." He shook his head weakly. "No hospitals. They'll find us." "Then what?" His lips curved faintly. "Then I disappear." The words cut through her like the cold. She wanted to argue, to beg, but she saw it in his eyes. He had already decided. This wasn't surrender. It was redemption. "You saved us," she whispered. He smiled then, a quiet, broken thing. "You saved me first." Outside, faint sirens drew closer. Police, maybe ambulances. The sound brought a strange calm to the chapel, as if the chaos had finally exhausted itself. Vincent pulled a folded envelope from his inner pocket and pressed it into her trembling hands. Inside are new names, bank cards, a small house by the coast, a chance to start over. Her voice cracked. "Come with us." He looked at her, truly looked, and for a heartbeat she saw the man beneath the violence, weary and full of regret. "If I come with you, they'll They'll never stop looking, but if I stay, I can burn down what's left of this world. So you can live." Tears blurred her vision. "You'll die." "Maybe," he said softly, "but not for nothing." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his touch trembling but warm. "Promise me you'll give Noah the life I never had. No more running, no more fear." She nodded, unable to speak. Shadow whimpered quietly, pressing his head against Vincent's knee. The man knelt weakly, resting a hand on the dog's thick fur. "Good boy," he murmured. "You take care of them, all right?" Shadow's tail thumped once, as if in answer. When Maya looked up again, Vincent was already walking toward the chapel doors, the dawn light framing him in pale gold. "Wait!" she called out. He turned, blood glinting on his sleeve like the price of redemption. "When it's safe," he said, "I'll find you." And then he was gone, a dark figure swallowed by white. Years passed, the sea became their lullaby. Maya, now Clara Hart, lived in a small coastal town in Maine where gulls cried over the docks and the scent of bread drifted from her bakery, Shadow's Bread. Her son, Noah, grew tall and bright, with laughter that filled every corner of their little home. Shadow had grown older, slower, his muzzle now streaked with gray, but his eyes still carried the same quiet wisdom. Some mornings, when Clara unlocked the bakery before sunrise, she thought of that chapel, the snow, the silence, the man who had walked away so she could breathe again. She wondered if he had lived, or if the storm had finally taken him. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the waves, the doorbell chimed. A man stepped inside, hair shorter, streaked with gray at the temples, glasses on his face, wearing a tan coat dusted with salt from the wind. But when he smiled, her heart forgot how to beat. "Coffee," he said softly. "Black, like old times." She froze, tears flooding her eyes. "Vincent?" He smiled again, smaller this time. "Not anymore. Just Michael." For a long moment, the world held still. Then Clara stepped forward, her voice breaking into a whisper. "You came back. I promised I would." Outside, the tide rolled in, and Shadow, older, slower, but still loyal, thumped his tail once before resting his head between his paws, watching the two souls who had finally found their way home. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive with thunder or angels. Sometimes they come quietly, in the shape of a wounded man knocking on a taxi window, in a mother who refuses to give up, or in a loyal dog who never leaves her side through the storm. This story isn't just about love or danger, it's about redemption. It's about how even the darkest souls can find light again if someone chooses mercy instead of fear. Because every act of kindness, no matter how small, is a whisper from God reminding us that grace still exists. When the snow falls in your life, when everything feels cold and uncertain, remember, God doesn't always calm the storm. Sometimes, He sends someone to walk beside you through it. May this story remind us that no one is beyond saving, no heart too lost to be found, and no night too long for dawn to break. If you believe that faith still works quietly through ordinary people, drop a heart in the comments and write Amen. Tell us where you're watching from, and if you've ever seen a quiet miracle in your own life, share it below so others can find hope too. Don't forget to subscribe to Soulful Stories for more tales of faith, love, and second chances. And tonight, as the snow falls outside your window, say a small prayer for the lost, the tired, and the brave souls still finding their way home. May God bless you, protect your family, and guide you safely through every storm. Amen.